Welcome back to the Expanded Minds podcast. Today, I have a special guest with me, and her name is Mandy. Mandy
Hi.
is an expansion coach who teaches something called Phase 2, which allowed her to integrate her psychedelic experiences into her daily life and retire at 26. She coaches inside her online mentorship community and also has written a book about her experiences called You're Not Crazy, You're Just Waking Up. So, that being said, welcome on.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, where I want to start out with is obviously in the intro, it says you've integrated psychedelic experiences. And so, I'm trying to get a quick gist of the timeline here. So, you were doing psychedelics or taking psychedelics, and then you ran into phase two, or can you kind of clear that up and give me like a timeline?
Totally. Yeah. So I have been had experiences with psychedelics for like years. So that was kind of what originally started expanding my mind, you could say, kind of opened me up to different ways of living. So I had psychedelic mushroom experiences in small doses, like since like 2016, maybe every year or so, twice a year. I don't know. I don't know the exact timeline, but I had several experiences with psychedelics. Each time was like a new perceptive shift of some kind, gave me some sort of like expanded view of my reality. And it wasn't until it wasn't until last Christmas that I took a heroic dose of mushrooms by myself in the dark, 5 grams, and it was like the craziest experience of my life. And right after that, I was like, I'm going crazy. I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to use any of this new information to like live my life. And that's when I found phase two.
What exactly was that information, if you can try to put into words?
Yeah, definitely. Words are funny. Um, that experience was like I collapsed the entire physical world. It was a complete out of body experience. And it was just me in the nothingness, consciousness. Everybody and everything had completely dissolved. And it was like I had this newfound awareness that, okay, I'm it. I'm everything. And I created this whole world. I created everything in it. And now I'm still sitting in my room as this like little Mandy character, and I still have all my same problems and nothing has changed. What do I do with my life?
Hmm. That's an interesting.
And
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, like, the thing that I was struggling with after it happened was like, this is a drug, this is a hallucination. So I don't know if this is actually real, even though it felt like probably the most real experience I've ever had in my life. And then when I found phase two, I was like, oh my God, there's people that are like living their life this way. I'm not crazy.
Interesting. So, what made you want to take a heroic dose of mushrooms in the first place? Like, do you feel like maybe building up to it? Because it seems like you're microdosing. Was that to help you prepare for a heroic dose, or like what? Why'd you want to take that big of a dosage?
I just had always been curious about it because people would say, like, oh, you meet God and, all this crazy shit. Little did I know that meeting God would be just meeting myself. But it's like this experience that Terrence McKenna claims is like, gonna give you this life-changing experience. And I was sick of my shit. I was fed up with my own shit at the time that I did it. And I would say I wrote about this in my book. I was like, if you're going to have this type of experience, especially alone in total darkness, yes, I do recommend work your way up to it because it's definitely an experience that I felt like I was prepared for, but nothing can really prepare you for something like that.
What exactly do you mean, like that you're God, or like like you found God by like finding yourself or whatever? Like, what exactly does that mean? So I think there's
So
different ways to interpret that for different people, at least.
you're right. So for me, it was like everything collapsed completely. And it was just the essence of me. Like, I watched this theatrical performance where every single thread of the fabric of the nature of reality just dissolved away. And like, when I say I'm God, I mean, like, so are you. So is everyone. Consciousness. I'm the same God looking through Mandy's eyes as the same God looking through your eyes. But we interact with the world through these little avatars, these human avatars. And that was the experience that went away.
Okay. There's an interesting quote. I don't know if you heard it. It's by a mystic called Meister, saying this name wrong. Meister Eckhart. I think it goes like the same eyes I see myself as the same eyes I see like God with, something like that. I hope I didn't butcher that. If I did, I'll put the actual quote there. But kind of the same thing where it's like,
Yeah.
same eye that you've used to view things, the same eye, the observer eye, use, to see God and stuff like that. It's kind of like your spiritual faculty. But
Right.
so you're on your mushroom trip. You had that interesting that everything dissolved around you, and you're, learning how to integrate this experience. Don't necessarily know how to do it yet. You meet these people in phase two. Like, what is it like meeting these people? Like, where'd you find them at, or did they find you?
Well, you could say that they found me, but social media is how I found them. And I gained these two amazing mentors that were teaching phase two. And basically, what really stuck out to me was because I had been on the journey of all the self help books and so many different spiritual teachers and so many like the power of now, all the psychedelic stuff. And the difference with phase two was like the radical responsibility for being the creator of your experience. And I found that Sam was talking about a lot of how in mainstream manifestation and all of that stuff, like a lot of the premises, you create your reality, but like only the good stuff. And like all the bad stuff, like you're a victim to that. And that's just out of your hands. And the difference was with Sam, she was teaching phase two, and she was like, phase two is accepting responsibility for all of it. Like, you are God, you are the creator of everything in your experience. And that was the experience I had on mushrooms. And so I was like, oh my God, like, okay, there's people out here talking about this. This is amazing. And I joined their online community that now I coach in it, and I literally live with them. And it was just through a series of events that all of that unfolded. But
Yeah.
I found their community and I was like, oh my God, like here's my people.
Mhm.
And the rest is freaking history, man.
That experience you had with the that you realize you're God or whatever. Because some people, like, after they have trips, still have that. After maybe a couple months or maybe weeks or whatever, it starts to dissolve that whatever they went through. So, like, has that feeling ever stayed with you, or is it what do you call it? Do you find yourself slipping into that kind of state of being here and there, or you feel that way, like, or you feel that experience again, or does that happen to you?
Yeah, my entire life feels like a psychedelic mushroom trip now.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Like, the thing is, when you come to the realization that you are the creator of your experience, right? It's like the the whole psychedelic trip, that whole experience that I had, I created that. I projected that experience. And I just used the mushrooms as like a tool per se to convince myself that it was okay to like expand into that part of my consciousness. But you can have altered states of consciousness without taking psychedelics. So
Mhm.
that can become just a way of being, because the way that I see it is what happens when you take psychedelics is it's just an expansion of your awareness, right? So it's expanding your awareness to be able to see things differently, see different perspectives, and you can expand your awareness without psychedelics. I haven't taken psychedelics since that experience last Christmas, but now I found this community in these teachings and I was like, "Oh, okay. You don't need the drugs."
Mhm. So, do you think that it can be dangerous though to expand your perspective like that if you're not ready for it? Like, do you think that some people just aren't ready to see another way of viewing things?
I don't think that you would create an experience that you're not ready for.
Just in general, or
Just in general, because the other thing I noticed too with psychedelics is like I it wouldn't really matter what dosage I would take. Each experience would be so vastly different based on what my new awareness I had was. So I think that for everyone, your unique experience with something like that is going to be different based on just where your awareness is at.
okay. How have you seen like maybe your time maybe doing psychedelics or also spending your time around these people in phase two? Because I know that definitely you've probably gone through different identity changes or maybe dropped different beliefs that you've had. So like, how have you seen the way you view things, or have you seen your beliefs change over time like that? And what kind of beliefs have you changed or let go of?
I love that question because phase two is all about letting go of your beliefs. So I look at it from the perspective of beliefs are limiting inherently. So any belief that I have is my matrix of reality, right? Your matrix is your set of belief systems that you operate from. And rather than changing my beliefs, being like, oh, I used to believe money was hard to make. Now I believe that it's easy. It's about dropping the belief completely, accepting that both things can exist and not focusing on one belief. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So to kind of maybe detail it, if I get a thought maybe from my mother, for example, or from I don't know, from whoever, and then they tell me like, "Hey, it's life is pretty rough," and they tell me that, and then in that moment, then I start to think about it like, "Oh, maybe life is pretty rough." You think that's like you think people then start to create their experience as their life being rough at that moment, or do you think like because you've touched on maybe creating your experience and how people create their experience. So is that kind of how you view things, where it's like someone receives a thought from somebody else and they start to believe it, and that's just how life is? Is it kind of like that?
Totally. Like your belief systems are made up of things that you put people in your experience to tell you things, and you accepted that as the way it is, for sure.
And what exactly do you mean by like putting people in your experience?
Well, once again, if we're taking a step back and coming from the perspective of consciousness, like you're the creator of your experience, that means that you created institutions, you created other people, you created everything about the system and society to condition you to believe that you're limited by all these beliefs.
Okay. And how do you view kind of life as an illusion, or you see things? At least I'm looking at some of your contents. It seems like you consider this like a game or illusion. What aspects of it do you think is illusion and like a game? And like, how do you awaken from it?
All of it. All of
All
it
of
is
it
a
from
game.
okay. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So Here's the thing. It's like in the beginning of my journey, it was really like I got really stuck on the whole idea of like, is this real? Is this not real? Is this an illusion? Is this fake? Um, and that whole perspective shift from taking things super seriously to being like, oh my God, this is a video game is like really helpful when you're first breaking loose of all of these limiting belief systems because you're like, oh my God, like this isn't life or death. Like, not everything I'm going to do is like this serious, oh shit. This is a hologram. And you can't have one thing be an illusion and another thing not be. It's all an illusion. It's either all an illusion or it's all real, however you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm. And going into a little bit of like, I guess your coaching style and stuff. How do you stop people from repeating the same day over and over? Because it seems like you live a pretty spontaneous lifestyle. So how do you stop people from, feeling like they're doing the same old kind of thing?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, it's all awareness, right? So there is nothing about your experience that isn't there because you want it to be there. So a lot of times people will be like, they'll get a life coach or whatever because they're like, oh fuck, like I want to change my life. I feel so sick of my bullshit, etc. Well, you can't this holographic reality is very literal. So you can't really necessarily change unless you accept what you've already created. So if you're sitting there like, oh, I just really want to change, I really want to change, I really want to change, you're going to keep living the same day over and over again. Because you're not allowing your experience to change. You're trying to get it to change. So my coaching style is a lot of being like, hey, this is what you're doing. Because we can't perceive ourselves. So you could sit here and tell me about all these issues you're having. And I'm like, yeah, you created that because this is what you're doing. It's not necessarily being like, here's some advice on how to change your experience. I don't do that. Who the fuck am I to give someone advice on their life? I mean, the only person that knows your life is you. Nobody else is going to be an expert on your own life.
And like, what is the importance of like paying attention to like what you feel?
Everything. See, the only reason why we can even perceive that this physical world is out here is because of our feelings. So your feelings create your entire experience. And most of the time, when you're wanting something to change in your experience, you're like, oh, fucking hate this. You're just avoiding feeling those feelings.
Can you control what you feel, or is kind of what you feel something that happens spontaneously and in the moment, like it just arises from, I don't know, some unknown place?
Yeah, I mean, no, you can't. You can't control what you feel. That's the thing. It's like you can't fabricate feelings. Like think about like when you love somebody. You don't get to like just decide that. You don't get to decide like I'm going to convince myself to love this person or I'm going to convince myself I don't love this person. Like your feelings are just there. They're either there or they're not there. You can't fabricate feelings.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you then use your feelings as a guide to go in the right direction? Is it like just a moment to moment entering into the unknown kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing called our intuition, right? It's your feelings. So, if you as you begin to get more present into your body, into your present moment experience, you become more aware of your feelings. And who's to say that if you were to just pay attention to your feelings, your body wouldn't just go do whatever it is you're going to do? We just think that we know the way that things work. We think that we have to figure things out and have to have a plan for everything. And when you really start to pay attention to your feelings, you realize that's not actually what's happening at all.
And then as you pay attention to your feelings and as they arise spontaneously, do you keep going deeper and deeper inside of yourself to the point to where things that you never thought were there show itself and then it can surprise you?
Totally. Yeah. Because like we have a very surface level understanding of feelings. Like there is so much to our feelings that even I am not even aware of yet. And like even I, like as if I'm some special feelings god or something. No, but like even when you're practicing this, like I live a very intuitive life. I don't schedule anything. I don't plan out literally anything. And this is like the only thing that's been on my schedule for the past week. But anyways, so like back to what I was saying about feelings, like we have a very surface level understanding of feelings because we know like sadness, happiness, anger, guilt, shame, like the ones you can like label. And that creates this like barrier because those are all judgments. So when you judge the feeling as like what we perceive as negative, you're like, "Oh, I'm not going to feel that one." Well, as you allow yourself to feel your feelings more, you start to have feelings that you don't even have a word for. You might even just feel like all of a sudden I'm sitting here eating dinner and I have to put my fork down and walk outside. I don't know why, but I just had the feeling to do it.
Mhm.
That's your intuition.
That's a good way to put it. And how do you drop expectations and like if you pay attention to your feelings, one thing especially that happens, I think to a lot of people is that they're like expecting to get something like if you move by what you feel, they're expecting something to happen or the way that they want it to. And then sometimes it doesn't happen like that. So like how do you kind of drop the expectations in terms of like living in the moment and like getting yourself to live in the moment?
The expectations come from a progressive mindset. It comes from everything being a means to an end. Like there is a destination that I'm doing this to get this outcome, right? Like, and dropping those expectations is just a matter of becoming aware that you even have them, becoming aware that they're there, becoming aware of like, oh, why am I doing this? Oh, I'm doing this because I think it's going to get me a specific outcome. And focusing more on doing things just for the sake of doing them because what you're doing is the experience. There's nowhere to go or get to.
Yeah, and you had like a certain. I remember looking at it. It was a moment when you were with someone in the car, and then I think it was like you were focused on going to like the top of a mountain or something, and then you're like, oh, like I can't wait to start this adventure. And then can you go into that story right there and like how that kind of showed you to live in the moment?
Yeah. Yeah, that's literally a perfect example. I was taking Andre on an adventure and I go I got intuitive guidance to just take him on an adventure. And I had this vision of this place I wanted to go that I've been to once before and I was like, "Come with me on an adventure." He's like, "All right, sure." We get in the car and I'm like, "All right, we're going to go on an adventure." And he's like, "Okay," as we're driving. And then we like pulled over because I was like, "Do you want to get a drink before we go on this adventure?" And he's like, "Are we not already on the adventure?" And it like hit me in that moment that I was like so focused on the destination. I had this vision of this place that I wanted to go. And I was like nervous because I was like, I don't know how to get there. I'm going to use my intuition and just, we're going to fucking wing it and we'll get there. And so I'm like, we're going on this adventure, totally missing the present moment and the fact that I was literally on the adventure.
From the beginning, yeah.
But that's what we do with our lives, like completely all the time. It's like if you have a specific outcome that you're hoping for, a specific goal or thing that you want to have in your experience, every step of the way to having that experience is also the experience.
Hmm. And so if people maybe they're on a life path that they don't want to be on, and miss, basically they're in the headspace of like, if I get, $1 million, then I'll be happy. So would you say like maybe they're creating an experience where they would suffer and have an unhappy life, or is it like maybe do you think they're on a path that they shouldn't be on, or how would you kind of interpret a situation like that?
I would interpret that situation as that person is using money as an excuse because there is no dollar amount that you get to where all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I'm good. We think that we want money. Everybody thinks that they want money. They think that they want like $1 million and they're like, okay, then I'll be good. Then I'll be able to do whatever I want. No, you just want to not have to worry about
And how do you stop people from worrying?
it. Well, I don't stop people from doing anything. It would be quite interesting to give me that power. But the thing is that you can just stop at any moment. We don't understand how anything fucking works in our experience. We think we know how everything works, and we think that we have to figure everything out. We have to have a plan. We think we know how to make money. We think that we even make money. And we have an explanation for why everything happens exactly the way it does. Because that whole explanation keeps us from feeling our feelings. But in reality, you are money. You are money. Money just supports you for just existing. But it's too scary to just let go. Stop worrying. I couldn't stop worrying. Maybe once I have $1 million, though. That's what we tell ourselves.
Is stopping, I mean, obviously, like you can kind of catch the feeling, like if you're at a stop sign, or if you like, if you're maybe in sports, you stop a movement and then you go the other direction. Is that kind of what you're trying to hint at when you say stop? Like this person's thinking in a certain way, this person's maybe feeling a certain way, and then it's just telling them like just to stop for a second. And then what, like, do you think that they should redirect their mind somewhere else, or like,
It's all about awareness. So your experience is going to unfold exactly the way that it's going to unfold. But when you become aware that you're doing something that you no longer want to keep doing, when you have the awareness that you're doing it, you can just stop. You don't have to know what else to do instead because that will just come up naturally when you make the decision to do something different.
okay. And you think the worry comes from being too far in the future? What do you think worry comes from?
Well, worry definitely doesn't exist in the present moment. I mean, when you're worried about something, you're creating a situation that doesn't even exist. Something that's gonna happen to you maybe in the future, you think, based off of things that happened in the past.
And then what's your takes on like likes versus dislikes?
That's a great question. I was actually just talking about this. Likes and dislikes, preferences are all bullshit. They're all bullshit. So, like, I I don't think it's really necessary to get rid of them or that they're a bad thing or anything like that. But when you say you dislike something, you're basically making yourself a victim to it. You're like, I don't like the way that this makes me feel. I want to avoid the feelings that I get from this experience. And even when you say you like something, you're making yourself a victim to it because you're saying that this thing has the power to make me feel good. You're putting the power outside of yourself.
And so, because most of our culture is based on liking or disliking opinions and things like that. So, what do you think is the difference between somebody that has likes versus dislikes versus somebody that doesn't?
I don't really think that anybody doesn't have them. I think that I mean, maybe, at least in my experience. I don't know anybody that doesn't have likes and dislikes. But I think it's about, once again, just being aware of it. Being aware of, like, oh, like, usually we go about our life so unaware of things and we're like, oh, I just don't like that. I like this. I don't like that. We have so many opinions and preferences about everything, which creates so much resistance and struggle in our experience. When you realize, like, oh, I really don't like that, becoming aware of, like, oh, interesting. Like, why don't I like that?
Do you think telepathy is real? It's a random question.
100%.
Why do you think it's real?
Not a random question. I'm obsessed with telepathy because I can do it.
Why do you think it's real? Like, what's the first telepathic experience?
The first telepathic experience that I've had is my mentor gave us this exercise where all three of us, me, Sam, and Megan, were holding a rock, right? So it's the same rock. We passed it around. We took turns holding it. We sat there, took turns holding the rock, and then passed it, and each had a turn. And then one by one, we took turns imagining we were holding the rock as the other person. And then we described, like, what that sensation felt like. And it was 100% accurate each time, with the way that we all held the rock differently. This is another thing, telepathy is just feelings. So stay with me here for a second.
Mm-hmm.
If you're consciousness, if you're everything, right? You're God, you are everyone else too. They are just you. So why would you not be able to feel what they're feeling? Why would you not? If it's you, you created them, you put them there. So why would you not be able to? The only reason is because you convinced yourself that you couldn't. So when you start to pay more attention to your feelings, this is what I was talking about with how, like, you start to have feelings you don't even have a description for. Telepathy is one of those things. You can feel what somebody else is feeling. A lot of times we think of telepathy as, like, it would be words, right? Like, it would be like, you can read my mind and I could say words to you in my mind and you'd hear it. Well, try to yell inside your mind right now. Pretty weak.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really, there's not a lot of force with words. So feelings are where all the power is and all the energy. So you can much more easily feel what somebody else is feeling rather than hear what they're thinking. So if you want to send a message to someone telepathically, do it with your feelings.
And you've tried doing it by just thought alone? And it was
Yeah,
hard
and
to do?
for me it was.
And did you have to get yourself prepared to do it? Like, send out a message through your feelings, or was it just kind of automatic and innate within you?
It's pretty innate. The more that you kind of start to realize how much we have tricked ourselves and, like, convinced ourselves that we're like these small, limited, powerless humans, it's like the more that you break away that bullshit, the easier it is to tap into those other senses and feelings.
So when you receive like an intuitive, or that's one example of, you could say, telepathy. Is there any other different unique cases that you've thought about in terms of, like, you've read somebody's mind and what they were thinking?
So here's another way you could look at it. if if you're everybody, you wrote the script. We do telepathy all the time. We just dismiss it. So, like, when you're sitting next to somebody that's like your friend or whatever, and say somebody else walks in the room that they don't like or something like that, you catch a vibe, you're like, ooh, that was kind of like something. They had a feeling about that. We catch those little things all the time, but we dismiss it because we doubt our own feelings. We don't trust our own feelings. So we'll sit there and be like, well, I don't know. I don't actually know how that made you feel. But we do. We do all the time. So, like, if you look at it from the perspective of you created this person, you wrote the script and handed it to them to play the character in your story. So, you are a lot more aware of the way that they feel and the way that they're going to interact with you, the way they respond to things, than you allow yourself to see, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. You gotta have sort of an expanded perspective on the entire situation to in order to see, these things happen. Because it happens to me all the time. Like I can read stuff like that pretty. I mean, it's pretty easy. I think everybody has like a certain biofield or energy field, and if yours is pretty much intact or it's healthy, you can easily kind of pick up on these things pretty well. Like just a natural healthy thing. Like if your aura is pretty healthy. You think that's, or have you looked into like auras and stuff too? Like,
See, I don't know too much about that. That's a little, to me, that's like overcomplication. But I could see how that would be a cool thing to like look into. To me, it's just all feelings.
okay, yeah. Did you
I
research
like,
telepath? Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I just was going to say, I like to keep it really simple.
Yeah, of course.
Um, did I research
Yeah.
telepathy? No. No, unless you want to call my personal experience research.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a
Okay.
mentor, well, two, that have taught me a lot of shit.
It's one of the biggest like shifts that you made from your mentor, like something that he showed you that made you uh realize something that was right in front of your face, but you didn't see it before.
Everything, because everything's always right in front of your fucking face. Um, one of the biggest shifts, it's hard when I feel like I have a hard time answering these type of questions because biggest is such a judgment. And it's like everything is its own unique experience, right?
Okay.
But
Yeah, we can reword it to like, yeah, unique. Because I'm
yeah,
just trying
let's
to get a
see.
feel for like what's unique to you and like what stands out to you. So I use the word big in that context.
Yes, I totally understand what you mean. The words and the judgments and comparisons help with conversation. I would say like there have been times where me and my mentor have had like what you could consider a full-on conversation with no words. And that
Hmm.
was potentially one of the more eye-opening experiences to me of how little I actually know about how anything fucking works. Because it's like, yeah, it was so, I was like, I didn't realize I could do this. And he's like, you can do this with literally anyone in your experience. You're just only allowing yourself to have that with me.
Hmm. I think that's real. So,
We have a lot more influence over our experience than we let ourselves believe.
and so what was that moment like? Was it like a sit down moment where he's gonna show you, or was it just like maybe a spontaneous moment, where it just kind of happened, or
It was like we were in separate rooms having a conversation through feelings and then texting about it. And it was like, oh my God, like you're getting the exact message I'm sending you. It just happened.
so? Wait, who started the conversation? Like, who started the
It,
conversation? Like, how did it keep going back and forth?
me, because that was one of the first things that when I got here for my mentorship, I was like, tell me about telepathy. I had had so many like dreams about it where I was like communicating with people with no words and like all this stuff with just feelings. So I was like, I know this shit's real. Like, tell me. And he's like, just try it. Like, focus on your feelings. He is the one that told me, he's like, yell inside your head. How loud and strong and powerful is your voice inside your head? And I'm like, it's a pipsqueak. So
Hmm.
that was when he's like, send me a message with your feeling. I'm pretty sure the first thing that I did was something like along the lines of like, I'm just touching your hand. And he sure got the message. Boom.
Like it was the message. I'm touching your hand. I mean, it's probably both, but like
Yeah.
you also were touching his hand too, like feeling wise.
With my feelings, yeah, but I'm in a
Yeah.
completely different room. But that's the thing is like we have such a disconnect. We create so much separation between what's happening in here and what's happening out here when there is no difference. The only perceivable difference is the feelings.
Hmm. Yeah, I see what you mean. And so,
So,
man, it seems like you got a lot of experience with telepathy. Would you ever teach somebody? Would you ever teach somebody like how to do it? Like, do you think you could tell people?
yeah,
That's cool.
for sure.
You, you want? I
Because
mean,
the thing is, you already know how to do it. So, you already know how to do it. You just convince yourself that you don't. Because imagine this. Not only do you do it all the time already, like I've already explained, like when you can feel someone's energy coming into a room, etc. But also think about like before language was a thing. Like if there wasn't words, how the fuck would humans communicate?
feeling. I would say so.
All feelings. So
Universal.
like
Yeah.
how do babies communicate? Babies use telepathy all the fucking time. All the time, and we use it with them because we know what they're feeling without even them having to say anything.
Hmm.
So you already know it. It's just about you already know exactly how to do it. It's just about paying attention to it. So like I even gave an example of this in a piece of my content that I made where I was like, if you want to try telepathy with somebody, and if anybody's watching this and you want to try it, this is something you can do. Get somebody, put them on the phone with you if you don't have them in person, preferably in person, but it doesn't matter because it does in person's an illusion anyways. So
Hmm.
get somebody and sit there with them, allow them to close their eyes and become present to their body and their feelings. And imagine you're like touching their ear or something. And then ask them what they felt. And then switch.
Yeah.
See what happens. The only reason it wouldn't work is if you don't want it to work. If you
Hmm.
don't actually want it to work, then it's not going to work. And you're going to be like, oh, I thought you were touching my toe. Oh, because you're like, I don't want to see that far into this yet, which is fine. Which is fine if it doesn't work and you don't want to see that awareness yet, then that's cool. It's not a problem, but you know how to do it. You just fooled yourself that you don't.
Hmm. So like Dow, yeah, because I've seen it too. Like with people, they're not relaxed enough, or how do I? They're not relaxed enough is one of them. Like they're too, I don't know, worried about it, like trying to feel something, and then they project anxiety rather than like actual the connection. There's like that. There's also like I think people hard to put in words are just not awake, and no, it's hard to put in words. I can't even say it, but I think you know what I mean by that.
It's awareness, yeah.
Yeah.
It's awareness and it's about trying without trying. Because if you're trying to feel it and to do it, you can't have the experience of trying and the experience of doing it at the same time. Once again, this whole field is very literal. If you're trying to do something, you're definitely not doing it. You're trying to do it. So you have to kind of get into that space where you're like, no, I'm just going to do it.
Hmm.
It's a different awareness.
You want to try it? We don't have to like put
You
this
want to do
part
it
in,
right
but
now?
yeah, I'm down.
Okay. All right. Who do you want
So
to go first?
Yeah, um, now do you want me to project an image or like project an image, or do you want, I don't think, I'll go ahead and project an image with a
All
subtle
right.
feeling behind it and
All right. Well,
see if you pick it up.
definitely like focus on the feeling.
I will.
All right.
All right. So, and then I'll let you know like when I'm done.
Okay.
All right. What do you think? What do you think? What image I put or sent out?
It's interesting because I feel like I'm trying to interpret the image. Give me a second.
Yeah, no worries.
It's like it looks like Winnie the Pooh.
Close. I'll say kind of. Looks like Winnie the Pooh.
What was your image?
It was an elephant actually. So
Interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
see, that's why I said I felt like I was trying to interpret the image because I was getting this like figure. But
yeah,
I was like
yeah.
that's a perfect example. See, you can put this in the podcast. This is a perfect example of how like our mind wants to interpret fucking everything, and that's what gets in the way of feeling your feelings.
Yeah. You could try the other way
Because
around too. If you
all
want a
right,
sentence,
let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
you could just be a picture or something,
All right.
and just let me know when you're done formulating it or sending it out.
Perfect. All right.
First thing that came to my head was a balloon, and then I saw like a memory of two people, but I didn't know. Like I saw a faint picture of two people from
Interesting.
your
Okay,
past. It has something to
so
do with your past, it seems like. But
so the balloon, I don't know, but the memory it was a memory of a feeling of being in a waterfall with a friend.
oh, so yeah, I had a faint feeling of someone from your past. Like it was a picture of you and like two people. I guess I couldn't see it was you. It was too faint. But then in my head, I heard the words. It was a memory from her past. Like it came up with
Mm,
words. So that's kind of how I saw it.
interesting.
So that's cool.
Hey. It's cool because it's like that was fun. Like I think that like the more that you identify with everyone in your experience as you, the easier that gets. That to me is like along with feeling your feelings and becoming more aware of your feelings, but that to me is like the key.
No.
Because when we have the illusion of separation and we're like, "Oh, you're a totally different person than me with such a different life and so many different things." Our whole individual identity is what gets in the way of that like fluid connection.
You think that, or like, you think you had that as a kid? Because I can remember personally, at least for myself, like I would see, for example, a car pass by, and I could actually feel like myself in it, and move with it, and then all of a sudden like I kind of snap out of it, or like maybe an entire group of people are walking a certain way and you can feel like the momentum of them shifting a certain way. So I mean, have you had it? I mean, is that kind of like how it was for you, or?
Well, I don't know if that was how it was in my childhood, but kids are in phase 2. Kids speak through only feelings. So, like, that's before you condition yourself to believe all of the bullshit. Like, if you watch her, I live with a 1-year-old that, like, runs around and literally will, like, scream, cry, feel her feelings, fall over, get back up, start laughing, keep running. Just pure feeling and instinct. That's all kids are, and that's what I teach with phase 2. Is like, you're like, people tell me all the time, my clients be like, "I feel like I'm just, like, remembering what it was like to be a kid." I'm like, "Yeah, essentially."
Yeah, that's what it was, or that's what it is. It's just waking up again. It's just becoming like a child. You know, simple.
Yeah,
Things are open. So, all right.
yeah.
I have a final question. If you were to experience something right now, what would it be?
This.
There you go. Okay. And where can people find you? Where can people find you? And, where
I don't
can
know
people
how I
find
could
you?
be experiencing anything right now except for this.
Teleport somewhere? Go
Yeah,
experience
right?
it.
Right?
But where can people find you?
People can people can find me on TikTok or Instagram. I have my tag is at Mandy.on.earth.
Cool. And I'll link all that below. And thank you once again
Perfect.
for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was really fun.